Howdy, everybody. This is the BBR podcast, episode 4. I'm joined, as always, by my co-hosts, Frederick and Paulus. And we actually have a guest today. This is... Drum roll, please. It's Roman from Cromlech and Into Oblivion.
Hails.
Hello. Yes, Eternal Hails.
Eternal Hails. Happy to be on. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for being on, man. Very, very much appreciated.
Awkward. Yep.
What happened? Did you go silent?
What was that?
Sorry. Yeah, no. It's no. As soon
This
as you
is how we treat guests. We bring them on and then we just stop talking.
Yep.
Shows yours.
No. Thanks for having me on, and I love your work in Galicia and Warriors Chalice. That's just really sick stuff, and I figure we'll have some interesting things to talk about musically over the course of this night.
Yeah. I actually wanted to bring up, you guys are working on new Cromlech material, right?
Yeah, we have a couple of new songs in the works. Yeah.
Already.
What about
Already?
Into Oblivion? What's that? Oh,
Yeah,
it interrupts. Yeah, go ahead, Fred.
No, I was just gonna say the new album just came out, didn't it?
Yeah, we were writing that material for a long time, though.
Fair. Yeah.
That's a lot of that stuff. The process of recording the album, that took a while. The process of mixing it, getting everything perfect, and doing all the necessary, prep for that. A lot of that material actually dates to about the same time as Into Oblivion's album Paragon. So we're talking about some of that stuff goes back to like 2013 or 14, like right after Ave Mortis. It's really all over the place.
Oh wow.
So it's not really that strange that we've been working on new material already. We have one that we're working on in Cromlech, and then with Into Oblivion, we've actually got 2 new songs done already. So about half the album.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah, thanks. That's we got 2. One's called Gallows Coronation, and the other one's called Towards the Nameless. We're still working on an album title and concept and all of that, and I wouldn't expect anything new anytime soon, but we are working on new material. We do have the one we're working on in Cromlech, and I have ideas for a different one currently, and Baron's got a couple of riff ideas too. But right now, what we're really focused on is just, it's been a couple of years since we played a show, and we're doing the album release show June 17th in Toronto. So we're just trying to get ourselves back in the seat as far as playing music goes, because we spent such a long time just sidelining everything so that we could record the album, make everything perfect, and that really took up all of our time before that. So it's been quite some time since we played live.
Nice. That's
Yeah,
that's pretty close. It's like what, 3 weeks away?
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
Yeah, that's right. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be the first Cromlech show in a long time. It's
So you
gonna be
guys
fun.
filming it?
Well, I'm sure somebody will. That one that we've got. I think it's on the Hessian Firm channel.
Mm-hmm.
That was a one-off because I think. I don't remember who was in the crowd, or maybe it was the place themselves at the Rock Pile. They might have filmed that one. As far as other ones go, it's usually somebody in the crowd just decides to film something. I'm sure somebody will film part of it.
Yeah, God bless
It's
those
impossible for him not to.
those people.
It'll
The
be
only
fun, it'll be
question is,
hype.
when will it wind up on YouTube? not
Probably.
if, just when.
Yeah, just when. Exactly, just when. It'll be high energy. I'm sure there'll be antics. I'm sure it'll be good. It'll be sick. I'm looking forward to it because it's been a long time since we played live.
Yeah, that live video on the Hessian Firm channel, that one's really cool. That has Born with Sword in Hand, right, from the new album.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it has that one, and that's really the only. Oh no, we actually did just the distorted half of Patria, that one interlude in the middle of the album. We did that as an intro to Born with Sword in Hand, because the first riff of Born with Sword in Hand references the first heavy riff in Patria, so they're kind of connected. They're referential to one another there. So we usually use it as an intro when we play live. But yeah, those were the only 2 new songs on that one. The rest was all stuff from Iron Guard or older cuts from the first album.
Yeah, Iron Guard
Yeah,
was really awesome too. That was the first that I heard from you guys from the Terminus podcast.
yeah. Thanks. That was I would say that's where our sound started to evolve a little bit there. The first album. Well, yeah, I would say so because I think on that one maybe the biggest difference is the somebody referred to us not too long ago as Graveland doing epic doom metal, and I think that really kind of started more on that one. We started to it was less like the traditional heavy metal elements were still there, of course, but we definitely started bringing in a couple of those more, I guess for lack of a better word, folk black metal elements and other things like that. And then actually one of the songs in that EP was a demo that we reworked for the EP, Lair of Doom. That was an old Cromlech cut that goes back to that was one of the first songs that Baron wrote for the band back when we were still practicing in our bass player's shed. And so we kind of took that and reworked it. But yeah, that was Iron Guard. Actually, within the band, if you ask Kevin, for example, what his favorite one is, and the rest of the guys, they'll usually say Iron Fist, Iron Will is one of their favorite songs. It's usually one we play live. It's always, I don't know. There's something anthemic about it. As much as you can't necessarily, it's a little biased to talk about your own music and which one you like. It's which songs you like or whatever. But I suppose that's also very arrogant in the typical Cromlech fashion. So I'll double down on it.
No, that one could be a Vakken song or something.
That's the secret. You have to have just a little bit of that stadium metal aspect into it. You have to have just a little bit of the fist pumping and the grandeur that some of the simple stuff that really gets across. You have to have the anthemic
Yeah,
elements.
especially in heavy metal, you need that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I can't. I mean, of course, with metal, obviously, it should go without saying. You can't. In fact, you should have much more heart than you have brains. You should have much more spirit.
Definitely.
But it doesn't hurt to have brains either. There has to be a union of the two.
Some brains.
Sometimes.
Yeah, some brains. Man, I feel like Baron is really going to dislike the fact that I brought up brains for that. I think he's going to be personally offended, and then he'll probably club me over the head next time we work out together. But way she goes. Actually, one of the things that I think is coolest about heavy metal, black metal, death metal, whatever it is, this complete lack of self-consciousness, this complete lack of self-awareness. It's like you're just doing something because it's cool and it's awesome, and the spirit completely trumps any attempt. The spirit trumps the technical aspect or whatever it is. I always like to go back to this as my perfect example. The Absurd's Facta Luncatur compilation, because you listen to the later Absurd songs where they clean them up on the on Die 15 Jahre Krieg or however it's pronounced, and they're good because they're good songs, but it lacks that spirit. And on Facta Luncatur, they can barely play the songs, but they come out better for it because it's just like there's this emotional aspect of like pushing the limit of what they're doing to try to achieve this goal of making good music, making good metal. And I love that. I think that spirit 100% of the time always has to trump form when it comes to music.
Yeah, that's a good way to putting it. Is like, they can't necessarily like play the riffs like exactly the same way, exactly the same time, but there's that feeling behind it, and those little mistakes and nuances like really bring that shit to light.
It kind of
there's
comes back to what I was
something
saying
about
last week. Sorry, no, go ahead.
No, I was just saying there's something about hearing the struggle and the passion in there that just really kind of adds to the music for me.
Yeah, what I was saying is one of our rabbit holes we went down last week was being accused of being elitist when you prefer demos of bands. And I was saying that for me, it's when you have those demos, they're usually done in rehearsal rooms, or they're still very raw, very impetuous, very spontaneous. I love that combustible sound, right? And it's not that I'm trying to pick a demo just to piss people off because I like this better because it's a demo. No, I just like the raw energy that they have behind it, right? Because you don't, when you're recording an album, obviously there's a lot more, uh, usually a lot more thought, a lot more meticulousness behind it. But a lot of the times, those demos and rehearsals is just whatever comes out, and I love that. I love that aspect of it.
Yeah, definitely. I think you get more self-conscious at the album writing portion, the album recording portion, and that's good and bad because you need to have polish, you need to refine your craft, but there is something about the youthful raw energy of a demo that's always good.
Yeah, the vocals on that first Absurd album are awesome. With like
Yeah,
Morning
dude.
Soul and what was that other song, Gates of Heaven?
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. And then yeah, that's on the on Fuck the Lunka tour. There's one I really like. It's one of the later songs on the album, Requiem. Man, it's like you can just like there's this there's this youthful passion and melancholy that comes through there that like I don't know if I don't know if they could have done it the same way as an older band. Even though the drumming is awful, it's absolutely horrible. The guitarist can play, but the drummer has no clue what he's doing.
Yeah, that kind of adds to the atmosphere of the whole thing. Like
Same.
there was a band, like some Russian band. They're called Athreos. They did a Morning Soul cover, and it's a live version, but they do it so close to the way that album is done, like as bad as that, which is a good thing. It's really
You know,
awesome.
imitating the badness that takes a bit of skill.
Yeah, totally. It totally does.
Anyone ever heard
I,
the Morning Soul cover on the Anti album, Insignificance of Life? It's like a
no,
DSBM interpretation of it, and it's actually really good.
I remember Anti. I've never heard that cover though.
It's at the end of the first album, and they pulled it off really well. It's slower, but it still only lasts like 3 minutes. But it's which is I guess double the original, but still
That's
they pulled
such
it
a
off
funny
really well
concept
somehow.
to me.
Yeah,
That's such a hilarious concept, like a
and I'm
depressive
not I'm not
suicidal
a big
black metal
DSBM
band.
guy, but that one it's a good fucking album.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, I've never checked it out, so can't comment.
But yeah. On that note, um, Roman, do you want to get into what album you picked this week for us?
Yeah, yeah. It's. I don't think it's the most unknown album in the world.
It's pretty unknown.
It's
I had never heard it, or I guess I had, but not.
but you forgot about
I
it.
forgot. I forgot.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Every time I bring this up, some people know it. It's typically people that have combed the Dark Legion's archives lists, pretty thoroughly, like myself back in the day, and spent a lot of time listening to stuff on there. That's the only reason I know it. And yeah, basically, I picked Structures by Suffer. So Suffer was a Swedish death metal band from the early '90s, and being somewhat atypical in this respect, they definitely did not sound like a Swedish death metal band. They very much imitated the American style. The only other band I can think that really did this was Hypocrisy. On their first couple of releases, they really went for the sound that was kind of based off the Tampa Bay death metal sound. I would probably say, yeah, I don't know which bands I would reference directly with that I could do as clear as I could in the case of Suffer. But anyways, in Suffer's case, if you listen to Suffer Structures, it very clearly the first thing that comes to mind is spiritual healing and human era death, which is a little bit interesting for me because I don't usually hear bands copy that to such a such a direct way as has happened right here. I don't know if I would say it's exactly on the same level in terms of like technicality or progressiveness or whatever the heck that is, but it definitely sounds very similar to that. But the cool thing that it does is it brings in these. It does have that edge that makes it appear a little bit smarter at first, and there's definitely a certain degree of intricacy and complexity to the songs, but it just comes in with these like low IQ asphyx obituary like sledgehammer riffs every once in a while, and it just like completely they just steamroll these this entire sections of the song, and I love it. It sounds kind of like death mixed with obituary, but in a bit more of a high energy fashion than you would think from either of those bands. Yeah, so Structures, I checked that out maybe for the first time. less than 10 years ago, but probably close on that. And it just happened to be something that was in my rotation recently. I listened a lot more to the EP they did before that, Global Warming, for a long time. But yeah, it's a good solid album. It's got it's got a bit of almost of this, like, it's got this really like percussive thing going on. All the tremolo riffs are palm muted except for like one. It production wise and just the way the riffs and the drums and the bass fit together, you'll think of the faster sections on Spiritual Healing or Human for sure. Vocals are pretty solid. They sound a little bit like John Tardy, though not quite as good. And I think about it's the only bad thing I could say about it is that the solos are just completely throwaway. There's every time the solos come up, you're going to be like, okay, well, that was pretty useless, and like not even like, not even in like, you can listen to like, okay, you can listen to Massacres from Beyond, and you can listen to Rick Ross just do nothing but whammy bar for an entire solo, and it works. That's not the case here. The case in this case is just a random selection of notes that isn't even random in an interesting way. It's like a low energy random solo. But that's the worst thing I could say about it. I think it fits this kind of place for me that certain other albums fit. We're just kind of like a good early solid 90s death metal album. Typically speaking, I always like to go for like the either something really ambitious or alternatively like one of the really complicated like masterworks, like some of like At the Gates' early stuff, or Cenotaph, or Sacramentum, or some of the classic, some of the classic black metal albums. It's kind of nice every once in a while to go for these more like meat and potatoes, like just good solid, hits it right when you need it kind of album. I find Sentenced Shadows from the Past, though being better than this, is kind of in the same position for me. I guess that one actually has a couple of death and obituary moments too, but it's more melodic. Anyways, yeah, no, Suffer Structures, it's good, it's aggressive, it's compact, and yeah, it scratches an itch, basically.
All right. Paul, you want to give your take here?
Sure. I think Roman, hit it right on the nose with, death, spiritual healing. I was hearing like some pestilence in there, and then just with those, sledgehammer riffs, definitely some like hardcore influence, which we all know is, foundational to Swedish death metal anyway.
Oh yeah, big time.
And yeah, especially with those vocals. And when I was listening to this, I feel like it picked up a lot more towards the end, like the last three songs, like those, at least drumming wise, like that's when this guy actually started blasting and shit.
Yeah, that's also one difference between that and Obituary and Death is you do get blast beats in this album.
Yeah,
that's
what I was gonna say. I was like, this is like Death with blasting, Gene Hogan, with a little bit more balls. But yeah, when I was listening to it, it went by really quick too. It's only like maybe not even a 30-minute release, but when I was listening to it, all those structures that they contrast with like these pretty like lowbrow complicated riffs, along with like these just hardcore like you were saying, like obituary type riffs, it was really nice to hear, along with like the sort of complex drumming in there.
Yeah, I would say it is.
Yeah, and doing a little bit of research on this band, because this is my first time listening to them too. I came across like an interview, and I thought one funny thing that the drummer said, he's like, yeah, he was asked why were you guys named Suffer, like who chose this name, and he's like, it was chosen by a band member, and we just kind of went along with it because he's like, yeah, Suffer, we all do it, so I like it. So it goes along with that kind of low sophistication that should be with death metal.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially with those, especially with these type of bands. But another funny thing that they're saying was like, with the vocals, he was like, yeah, I like the way that he did it, because if we would have done it like regular death metal vocals like everyone else was doing, we would have just sounded like Entomb or something. But I don't really know if they would have sounded like Entomb with their song structures at least and what they're doing.
The vocals kind of sound like Entombed from like the fucking Clandestine album, like
Yeah.
the yelling thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess with respect to the yelling, and again, that kind of goes back to the hardcore thing we're talking about right here. And actually, the general hardcore feel of the album is present because you have these song titles. There's no lyrics really available except the first one, and I don't have a CD copy of this, so I don't know if it's there. But, there's no lyrics really available, but you look at these song titles, and they're kind of like vaguely social commentary kind of things that
Yeah,
you may
freedom of
expect.
speech.
Yeah, freedom of speech, killing culture, selected genes. It's like, who knows what's actually being said. It's clear from some of the song titles too that English isn't exactly their first language. Like, come on, temporary sane. It's like,
Does he mean temporarily
the
sane?
lyrics?
or probably
He
temporary
probably-
sanity.
Temporary
The
sanity.
lyrics are actually in the booklet. I just pulled it up on Discogs. I don't have a copy either, but
okay.
someone decided to type up just the first song's lyrics and not bother with the rest. But you can,
Oh,
you can see them in there.
that's kind of funny.
But yeah, no, they're totally social commentary, like censorship and all that sort of thing. So
Yeah, and it kind of adds to with the song titles, what you can hear of the lyrics, the vocals, the aggression in there. You definitely there's just kind of this angry at the world hardcore feel about it, which I mean in this context it works. So I like that about it. It's like it's not
Yeah.
definitely my favorite style, but I like it.
Yeah,
I mean, they did have a EP before this called Global Warming.
Yes, that's
Yeah, that
I
kinda
was
says
talking
a lot,
about that
doesn't
one
it?
earlier.
I listened
Oh,
to
yeah.
a little bit of that.
Yeah, that's actually that's a solid EP. That was the one I was most familiar with before I listened to Structures.
yeah, very thrashier than this one, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah.
They were a little more simple at that one for sure, but you could tell that they had ambitions at something greater because the title track on that one's 7 minutes long. So
Yeah.
not that would be a that would be a short song by the standards of any band that I'm in, but for them that's pretty long.
Yeah, then I just thought it was a funny thing because like in this interview they were also saying like, we didn't want to sound like Entomb, but they're fine with sounding like another band because they openly saying like, oh, Death was a big influence as well as like Pestilence too, and they were kind of going more for something that didn't sound Swedish as a Swedish
Yeah.
band, and they were. I know we were talking about like kind of having a low self-consciousness about like what you're doing, but I think they had a pretty, they were pretty aware of what sound they wanted to go for, especially with their one album, because the drummer kept saying like, "Oh, this is my favorite release," and this is what Structures. I mean, this is what Suffer was trying to do, this whole time.
Oh. Yeah, yeah, for sure. It is funny how that ended up happening that way. And the funny thing is too that if you look at the notes of the album, it was recorded by Skogsberg in Sunlight Studios too, which is like that's the Swedish death metal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're saying like, don't get me wrong, we like Entomb, but we're trying to do something else.
Yeah, it's like we don't want to copy Entombed, we want to copy Death
Yeah.
instead. I mean-
Cynic and Atheist too, and yeah, the whole
Oh,
Florida.
okay. So they were actually copying. So they were copying the techier bands there from that thing. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think they quite got to the level of any of them.
Yeah, they barely got the structures, huh?
Yeah.
But yeah, Dan or Fred, whoever wants to go, what was your guys' take on this?
I'll go if Dan's
Yeah,
all
go
right with it. Yeah, no, it was. Again, I don't really disagree with anything you guys have said there. There definitely was like a small subsect of Swedish bands that sounded American. These guys are one of them. Like Roman said, Hypocrisy, Seance, Mastication. They all had that.
No, Seance. I can't believe I missed Seance. Dude.
Yeah, Salt Rub Dies. Oh my god,
Yeah.
it's one of my favorites. But there was definitely a lot of American sound in there. But if I had to pick one band that they just paralleled for me really well, both in terms of sound and with the technicality, and in terms of the social commentary of the songs, the Dutch band Polluted Inheritance. especially the
Oh,
album
man.
Ecocide. There's a lot of parallels between those two.
That's a good
Again,
one.
both the sound, the drumming, the more technical drumming, but I found this one a bit more aggressive. And although I hear a lot of the more technical aspects of this, again, like we pointed out, death, myriad death, cynic, atheist to some degree. I also heard like a bit of deicide in there. There's a bit more ferocity, and that might be where it sounds like the technicality is kind of not on the same level. I don't necessarily think that it wasn't on the same level. I just think they replaced it with a bit more aggression than those other bands were handling at the time.
Yeah, you know what? I think that's a pretty fair assessment, actually. I think,
Yeah, and another one that it really reminded me of this American band, Oppressor, Soul System of Oppression.
oh man, okay, yeah, you're bringing some good comparisons right here.
Yeah,
I
like it really made me remind me of that one. And even the album cover to a degree kind of echoes that one, but I don't. That certainly wasn't intentional. But
yeah, I would say.
I don't know why, because I can't think of a specific thing in both that makes me say this, but for some reason, Demented Ted jumped to my head when I was listening to it as well.
That
Demented
makes
Ted's
total
really
sense too.
really chunky. I didn't really necessarily find that with Suffer, but for some reason I couldn't get that one out of my head.
Demented Ted. I don't think I've. That's drawing a blank for me right there.
I believe they were from Florida. They're a bit of a lesser known band.
But Promises Impure was their only album, if I remember correctly, and
Yeah,
it's
they
a
only
good
had one. It was on Concrete, I think.
The one I have is on Pavement.
Yeah, sorry.
might
Did I
be
say
Red
Concrete?
Light.
Concrete, Pavement, Doi.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Well, I gotta say, like, good call bringing up Polluted Inheritance, because that's actually a very good comparison. The only difference I would say is that Polluted Inheritance definitely focused more on the technical aspect.
Yeah, they
where-
had more on the technical and less on the aggression than Suffer did, for sure, I think.
But
Yeah.
but even Polluted Inheritance, they did have, even them, they had a little bit of that hardcore edge to them. I remember. I haven't listened to the Eco Side. I haven't listened to that album in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It's good though.
The
Yeah, friends are.
the one thing that was weird was the vocals. That was probably the one thing that didn't, I think, jive as well with the album overall. Not to say I dislike them, but I would have preferred a more typical death growl. They kind of remind me of Leukemia, Suck My Heaven.
Yeah, same here, dude.
It was like a cleaner kind of yell, kind of shout, which, again, totally listenable album. I like it, but I would have preferred a typical death growl. I think it would have suited the what they were going for more. In terms of the solos, I totally hear what Roman was saying. It's almost like they're flailing and throwing everything at the kitchen, in the kitchen sink and hoping it works. And you know what? I actually kind of like that. I find that sort of randomness has its charm, and I kind of enjoy that. It really is like just absolutely random, but for me it worked. I don't have any better explanation than that. I don't have any logic behind it. I just enjoyed it for what it is.
Oh, that's fair. I just found that again, like there's noise solos and there's chaos solos, there's garbage solos and things like that. Like, you can use these musically. It doesn't necessarily have to be like super complicated or even. Yeah, it's just, I just find that I just don't find them very memorable.
Yeah, no, you're totally right, because I couldn't tell you what any of them sound like when a song starts, but when they come up, I'm just like, oh, this is kind of fun.
Hey, you didn't like that one that went. No, I'm just kidding.
It fits more in like a war metal context, it seems like.
Well, you see,
Yeah.
that's the thing. What I'm trying to get at here actually is, I think war metal solos are more interesting than whatever they were doing here. Like, that's I really don't like the solos in this album. Like, not that I'm like, oh man, I shut the song off or whatever. I'm like, okay, yeah, you had a solo here just to have one.
They're not offensive, they just don't add anything.
Yeah, they don't add anything. Yeah,
that's
exactly.
fair.
Yeah, there was a real lack of melody throughout this album. Now that you mention it, like even
Yes.
solos, riff wise, any leads, it was more, kind of going for, I don't know, like a savage technicality,
Yeah, it's good. The album just basically kind of shoots directly right into the, I don't know, primal lizard brain or something. Like, it's like, just goes right in the center.
Yeah.
Definitely, ironic again for something that does have, it at least has some ambition of being a little bit higher concept. It's just it's a kind of funny halfway, right there. It's kind of stupid and smart at the same time.
Yeah. But Dan, you got something to say about this?
Sure. Yeah, I just thought of this when Fred was talking, or when you guys were talking about like Swedish bands that sound American. Deranged came to mind as well.
So
This
fucking
isn't as,
good.
yeah, this isn't as savage as Deranged, but it definitely falls into a Swedish band like sounding American. But when I first, like right away when I put this on, I heard like Malevolent Creation. That was immediately what I thought.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can hear
Okay,
that.
yeah.
And
Okay.
maybe this has to do with the lineup change, because I guess it was two other, because I had actually heard Cemetery Inhabitants. That was the only one that I had heard before this. That demo was more like early Asphyx, early Death, but with this new addition of the guitar player and drummer of Abhoth, they kind of bring in more like a really straightforward kind of death metal, more like kind of what fucking Morgoth did on their third album, that Odium album. That
Okay.
Because this thing is like almost industrial sounding,
Well,
if you know what I mean.
the weird thing about that is like after they recorded this album, that's when they got the members from Apoth. Like, I guess the guitarist was trying to keep the band together for like live shows and to write some stuff, but
No.
they
I
kind
think
of
this,
disbanded.
I think this album did have members of Abhoth in it.
Let me see.
I think this is the
I
one
know
that did have 'em.
the one guitarist was in there that was trying to get the other members, because the interview that I was reading, the drummer that recorded on this album was from Alter, but before their Cartilage split.
Yeah, it really does have the like straightforward Morgoth, or like somebody else said, the Pestilence sound. It has that like just really straightforward death thrash, like in the total vein of Death. And another band that this, like with the bass and drum, the way that those kind of came in, it reminded me of Morta Scold a lot with that second album, the one with like Adam and Eve on it.
As Humanity Fades.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
reminded me a
great
lot
song.
of that actually.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting. That's another
The
band name
bass on that sound on that album is
I
great.
do vaguely recall, but I don't think I've ever actually listened to that.
Oh, Morta Scold.
Yeah, is it worth it?
Yeah.
I would say their first two are definitely worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like that second album. For me, that's the highlight of their discography. The bass sound on that album is just fucking great.
That's the one I was just talking about, right? The one with like Adam
Yeah.
and Eve on it.
Yep.
Yeah, and it comes out the same year, and it's like the same kind of flapping bass sound. I don't know what it is about the bass sound that's not totally bassy. I just really like that.
Yeah, no, I love it for that reason too. It sounds great.
But yeah, same thing. It kind of has the Gore Guts feel to it too, like the early Consider Dead. Not really the second one, because that one almost sounds like Suffocation or something.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, that's kind of an interesting thing right there because, I mean, I know some people that think Consider Dead is the best Gorguts, and I certainly understand that opinion. Though for me, it's Erosion of Sanity. I think that's the one I listen to the most.
Yeah,
The
Erosion
second
of
one.
Sanity is the best one. That's the one that you kind of have to pay attention to, but everything feels so right. Like, it is a technical album, but there really isn't any filler on that thing. And that's kind of what I feel with this. Like, I was looking at some reviews and some shit that people were saying, and people are talking about this as if it's a prog death metal album. I mean, I really don't see this as a proggy death metal album, because
Yeah,
it just kind of goes. It's just riffs, no fucking filler.
Yeah.
Exactly. I would say I think it has ambitions in that direction, but I don't think it ever really capitalizes on them. I think it's very clearly because there is a little bit of intricacy with the song structures and the time changes and the tempos and such like that. But I would say it never, certainly, like if we're talking about the second Gorguts here, Erosion of Sanity, it never gets to like the technicality, progressive level of like something like that, or any Suffocation album is more technical than this for sure.
Yeah.
But you know, it's interesting you should bring up "Consider Dead" by Gorguts because, yeah, these like I said, that kind for me personally, that kind of fits into that, like, you know, some of these like really good early '90s solid death metal albums. For me, Erosion of Sanity is a really cool halfway point between Obscura and Consider Dead because it's got the greater ambitions than the first one does, but it also still hasn't forgotten the riffs. And then Obscura is like, I do like Obscura. It's just that's a once in a while listen right there. That's a once in a while listen because they've just gone kind of, well, you know, and we all know how it sounds.
Yeah,
the top.
Paul could go in on Obscura. I have a
Yeah.
hard time with that album.
Love that album.
I like it too. I just don't listen to it as much as the other ones, and I really appreciate what it strove for. It's one of those albums that for me that because of the nature of it, because of its unique nature, it's not portable for me.
Yeah.
It's not. You have to sit down and you have to sit down and be in the mood for something that's a little more for something that's a little more dry, a little proggier, basically.
Yeah, and the funny thing about this Obscura, it was like they got that sound from their guitarist they brought in 1998. I think his name's Steve Hurdle, and when you listen back to his first band or a band before that, it was called Purulence. On their Inverted Decay, like 1992, you're getting like Obscura riffs and vocals like all the like 6 years earlier. So
No
like
kidding. So
yeah,
that was him. That was all him, man.
basically. And then you know how the Gorguts guys are phenomenal musicians. They could probably pick it up and turn that style inside out, which they did with Obscura. So, but it's a cool little other band to go to if you're trying to scratch that itch further like me.
Okay, cool.
Purins
That's
are one of the most underrated Quebecois death metal bands. They're fantastic. I wish they would like compile the demos and reissue those because they're gems.
Oh,
I have the
Purulence?
split with, yeah.
Yeah.
I have the split with a Maimon, and that's really good too. But the demos and Inverted Decay are just absolutely wild.
Yeah, I've only listened to Inverted Decay, but yeah, just from what I heard there, it's so good. Like just those
Yeah.
two songs.
Yep.
Now going back to Obscura, it's funny because another one thing Baron would always say about that album is like, it sounds like he had some really weird description for it, like of how absurd it sounded. It's like man in a top hat riding a unicycle metal or something like that. Like
Yeah, it's kind of circusy.
yeah, exactly. He was not a
Yeah.
fan of it. He was not a fan of it at all.
I get that. I totally get it. I have a hard time with that one too.
Yeah, I like it, but it's definitely not an everyday listen. That's yeah. For some reason, the longest time, like I never really looked at the cover because I never actually owned a copy. For the longest time, I thought the cover image was a pig. I don't know why. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Sticking on Obscura a little bit longer. Paul, you said that one's from '98, right?
Yeah.
Have you guys ever heard of a band called Human Remains?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that name sounds very familiar. Okay.
One with the spider on it.
Yes, that one comes out 2 years earlier than
Oh yeah,
Obscura.
that shit's fucking crazy as
And
fuck.
if it's not an influence on Gorguts, then it's definitely just kind of reaching that where Obscura was 2 years earlier, because that one's pretty fucking crazy too.
Yeah, whenever I hear them,
It's called
I
Using Sickness as a Hero. Check
Yeah,
that
it
one
does.
out, and it's actually better than, in my opinion, I think it's better than Gorguts Obscura. Or at least it's interesting that it comes out slightly earlier. 2 years,
yeah, and this band always reminds me of Sadistic Executioner for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know why either. This
Yeah.
band always reminded me of Gorguts.
Okay, interesting. That's something I'll have to check out for sure.
I remember I heard this one ages ago, but I haven't gone back to it. I'll revisit it.
It's fucking brutal, dude. It's better than Obscura, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's
I'm pretty
technical
sure
in a different
I
way.
first like saw or heard this album back when I was like first getting into death metal, and we're talking like 20 years ago here. And for whatever reason, the cover just didn't do it for me, and I'm like, you know what? I'll just move on to something else.
The big spider lady.
I don't have excuses for what my teenage self did, but
Bro,
whatever.
but she has weapons in every limb. Come on.
Yeah, you got a hammer, you got a cleaver, you got a pick, you got an axe, and then the dude's being like squished in a fucking vice with spikes in it.
Hey, so
dang, dude.
this is a funny thing. Just looking at the lineup right now of Human Remains, I'm looking at the members, and so one of the guitarists was in. Afterwards, did Discordance. Actually, two of them did Discordance Axis afterwards. I
Really?
don't know if any of you guys remember that band.
Oh,
Yeah, the guy,
I love
that's
them.
that weird grindcore band.
Yeah, the weird grindcore band. So that actually makes sense that would sound a little bit like Obscura, because there's a little bit of that crossover where they do those weirder dissonant chords and everything.
Yeah, it's almost like bringing mathcore or like the like Midwest emo thing into your death metal or something.
So actually, even funnier than that. One of the other guitarists was in not a band I've ever listened to, but one that I always know in relation to mathcore, because I mean, when I was growing up, that was still a thing.
Yeah.
Dead Guy. One of the guitarists was in Dead Guy, and Dead Guy was a big metalcore mathcore band from the mid '90s.
Paul's the emo guy. You know that band, Paul?
Yeah.
Are they good?
I haven't listened to them. I just know like name wise, but yeah, it's
That's a good
interesting.
name. Dead Guy.
Yeah.
And I spent too much time in high school listening to that stuff. I don't think I can go back.
That part of your life is over with.
A long time ago. I became a lot more selective about what I listened to.
Yeah, same here.
Don't we all?
No, listen to any old shit that comes across my desk. I might not go back to it, but I'll give it a shot.
Oh yeah. You always got to give something a shot for sure. You know, it's just,
I'll just send you power electronics through the mail now.
Yeah, let's do it.
power electronics. So you're going to record your fan, and then put a bunch of effects on it.
No, but you don't know the lore about it though.
Oh, okay.
It sounds like buzzing.
It's all
There's a
about the
concept.
lore
Okay,
and
so
the live
actually,
performance.
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, it's all about it's all about live performances that are all just about making people feel uncomfortable. That's as far as I can tell what noise shows are. I've never
Yeah,
been
it's
to
a
one.
guy at a table with like a bunch of pedals, and he's like has a drumstick, and he's kind of hitting a tin can or something.
You're
Terrific.
just trying to hit the brown note. We all know it.
The brown
There-
note.
There's a bit of that going on, but I've seen examples of this on YouTube. I would be remiss to actually bring some up because I don't even remember the names because it's all noise and power electronics. But like literally, the whole thing seems to be participatory, like live performance art things where they just try to make the audience feel uncomfortable by doing sometimes funnily like very like passive aggressive things. Like I remember hearing about one where the whole performance was just a guy playing a recording of his album, but like more quiet, like quietly, so you couldn't hear it. So you had to stand, and then you had to stand really close to hear it, and then he'd like vaguely menace you when you got too close to it. It was like, it's one of the most. Like this is what I hear about when I hear about like power electronics and noise performances.
I thought like you
Reminds
would
me
just
of
wait till
that
they get really
Japanese
close
guy.
to the speakers and then just blare it.
I mean, you could do that. I mean, the theme seems to just be making the audience uncomfortable, so that would definitely do it.
That'd be a total dick move.
I was gonna bring up
Was it Arcanum at the end of Costiger? That element of weirdly low mix and they had a really loud lightning crash at the end of it. Or- I think it was Costiger, but it was just like for some reason they mixed it really low and then at the end of the album it's got a really loud thunder roll and you're like, God damn it, blow up my speakers.
Just a troll right there at the end.
Yep.
Dude, I was gonna bring up that fucking Japanese like power violence band, or not power violence, power electronics, where it's like, didn't he like bulldoze the whole stage? What the hell was that guy's name?
Oh yeah. I don't
This
know
was-
his name.
Wait a second. I mean,
Heard the story.
Yeah, I've seen the video too. I can't remember what he was called.
All right, I'm in. I'm into power electronics now.
Wait, you're talking about Virgo?
No, I don't think it was Merzbow. It was
Okay.
it was a band that like brought a bulldozer on stage and like destroyed everything.
I mean, I would go to see that.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I don't think I've ever seen a
sounds like a
power
liability
electronics band
issue.
before.
I wouldn't listen to it, but I'd watch it.
Yeah, just watch it on YouTube for like
Watch it
2
on
minutes.
mute, yeah.
Yeah.
And don't pretend like you listen to Death Key or anything.
Oh, definitely.
Just
I've never
buy the
actually
T-shirt.
I've never actually even tried.
It's just power electronics. It's what's his name, Kramer.
Right, yeah.
Hey,
I'm-
Jerry.
Well, you know, man, that whole name, Antichrist Kramer, just that makes me laugh every time I hear it. Just think like Kramer and Corpse Paint. or
Yeah,
something.
the opposite of Kramer.
It's impossible to hear the name Kramer and not think of something.
And not think Kramer. Yes.
of Cosmo.
Man, we had this one thing going on for a bit where Brandon, you know, every time we do a shit post or a meme, you can basically thank Brandon for having done it. He says, "Listen, if you guys have to tune on stage, I'm just going to like play Seinfeld bass, and you know, then we'll get Roman to like act out Seinfeld episodes from memory." By himself, doing all the parts, but like silently. So like it's like this is what happens if people aren't in tune.
I was tuning, Jerry.
Actually, speaking of Antichrist Kramer, you ever check out Intolitarian?
Yeah, I have 2 of their CDs.
Yeah, what do you think of them generally?
I mean, I bought those things. I wanted to like them, but there's not much there. At least for me, there's really not much there for me.
Oh,
Kind of
it's
stuff I can take in small doses. Like
I
I'll hear it,
I
I'll
tried.
like it. If it's on in the background, I wouldn't turn it off, but I probably wouldn't reach for it very often.
I like some of the samples.
I think all there is going on there is that there's a little bit of a novelty aspect for hearing it the first time. You know, just something about the way the distorted bass and the drums that are, you know, clearly recorded in such a way that they're supposed to clip. You know, the way that all kind of goes in the general chaos is like, yeah, it's a one-off listen. It's something. Yeah, no, I didn't really think much of it either. I just imagine it's probably more listenable than Death Key, but that's not exactly an achievement.
No, you know, that band reminds me a lot of I forget what they're called, Neocthabliz. You know those
Oh
guys
yeah,
are?
Neocthabliz, yeah.
It reminds me of them because I've heard from a lot of people who have seen them live. They're like, "Oh, they're great live," but their albums, it's almost unlistenable. It's all you can't really distinguish what's going on there.
See, I always wonder.
And I wish I could.
I always wonder with bands like Neocthabliz or Intolitarian or whatever, you know, when you have these noise, you know, black noise or, you know, noisecore bands or whatever, like, do they actually, like, the thing they recorded on the album, is that what they play live? Do they actually play anything intentional?
Did they write that? Are there riffs in there? You don't even know if there are fucking
Yeah.
riffs in there.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
Yeah. And I'm probably gonna get flack for this, but I kind of feel that way about Revenge too, especially the newer albums.
Oh,
They kind of just blur together
honestly,
for
yeah.
me.
Honestly, it's true. You know, I
Like-
love we love Jay Reed. We love fucking Vermin. We love sacramentary abolishment and
Sacramento.
Oh, God, yeah.
Sacramenti and Axis of Advance. We love that stuff, but Revenge, I mean, I don't know, man. It's there are things you can take from that. Maybe some of the slow build-up parts, but when it speeds up, it's not too much there, at least for me.
They use
Oh,
all the
that's
good
the
riffs
thing,
and
though,
Axis,
like
man.
Conqueror was great, and then the first 2 or 3 Revenge albums, like I can at least distinguish. I thought Infiltration was their best one, personally. And,
Yeah, I
and
like
after
their demo
that,
a
they
lot.
kind of felt like they were repeating and just blurring together too much to the point where it's just like I don't really need to hear it because I have the first 3, and it's kind of not enough difference between them to make it worth my time.
You know,
and not say
I'll-
I don't like them, but like there's not enough there for me to keep going. Like if I
Oh,
find
for
them
sure.
if I find them for $1, I'll pick them up and enjoy the listen.
Roman,
But like,
can you defend Revenge?
Oh yeah, actually, I'm going to slightly defend them. I'm not, you know. I will say this: I don't think, you know, because a lot of the guys around here obviously love Revenge, and the appeal is pretty obvious too. It's, you know, it's high energy. It's it's aggressive, it's dark, it's got it's got the cool aesthetics or whatever. I think one of the funniest trends I ever saw in Toronto, and maybe this went beyond there, but revenge being girlfriend metal. Because essentially like revenge has cool aesthetics, so it looks good on a back patch. So
Yeah, it looks good on a patch. They can wear the hoodie. They can wear the
Yeah.
T-shirt. It's revenge.
Yeah, exactly. So it's free. That was hilarious. I remember because Kevin in Cromlech, Kevin's about 40, so he's been around for a long time on this, and he's like, it blew his mind when he joined Cromlech and started seeing the Toronto metal scene more regularly. He's like, bro, how the heck is revenge girlfriend metal? It's like, have they ever listened to it a revenge EP? Like,
I think that's the whole point. Most people aren't going to listen to it. They're going to hear a sample and go, "Oh, I got this band. I know what they're about. Hey, let me buy the T-shirt."
Well, the
More,
Death
more
Grips guy
importantly, I
probably
think it
brought
just
him.
indirectly got called old.
Repeat that. I didn't hear that.
I said, more importantly, I think I just indirectly got called old. I'm almost 40.
Oh,
All right. Well, I'm 32.
Oh,
going
bollocks.
33, so-
You're wise. You're wise. There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
I've come to terms with it. It's okay.
Okay.
I was
not
saying,
Fred's wise. He's got a giant CD collection.
yep.
Okay. Well, back to somewhat defending revenge. I will say that actually I would say that Infiltration, Downfall, Death was I would listen to it on and off around the time that it came out. It did. You're absolutely right. The best parts in Revenge are when it gets kind of like slow and mid-paced. Those parts are always cool. Like those stompy bits and like I think the first one, Death Heritage. Where it's going dum dum dum. And there's like that whole like kind of mid-paced marching thing that happens there, and then in the last song too, Cleansing Siege, Take Them Down, has some really good parts like that. So I definitely like those parts of Revenge the most, and then I like the faster parts, which do have riffs. I have listened. There are riffs there. The faster parts are the best as the band uses the slow to mid-paced parts as contrast to the fast riffs, but I think really they're at their best when they do it the other way around. When they're doing like the mid to slow paced parts, and the fast stuff comes out kind of like as a contrast to that. Now, I would say I've never been able to go through a whole Revenge album front to back. So I can't defend them that much. But I will say that the 2012 album, Scum, Collapse, Eradication, that one actually had the most interesting songs, just with respect to the slower to mid-paced parts. Some of the, for lack of a better word, grooves that come up in that album are just great.
I remember that one being pretty dynamic compared to the ones that came before. I remember that.
So I mean, yeah, absolutely, and I would say, honestly, if I had to listen to Revenge, it would either be that album or I'd have to make like my own best of. They're a band I'd have to make a best of, essentially. I couldn't listen to most of their albums front to back.
They got better solos than Suffer.
Oh, okay, well, that's a good question. Actually, that's a funny thing to bring up there, because Revenge solos all sound exactly the same. Every single one. Yeah, it's like they're all exactly the same. And they actually tried changing that on the last couple. So funny enough, the most recent one, I don't know if anybody's actually tried listening to it, but it's on the computer in the jam space, so I gave it a listen one night. And yeah, the the last one they did, Strike, Smother, Dehumanize, it does consciously seem like they're trying to get a little bit more experimental, but I think that kind of just defeats the purpose of what Revenge is. Like, for example, they incorporated like a pick slide as like part of a riff, and I'm like, and I'm just thinking to myself, I don't know, I think you guys getting smart is kind of defeating the purpose here.
Yeah,
That's a good point. Like I'm ragging on Revenge for sounding like Revenge, but if Revenge didn't sound like Revenge, I'd be like, what the hell?
Yeah, so my defense of Revenge goes as far as they have some good songs, and the album that I can almost make it all the way through is Scum, Collapse, Eradication, and I actually just every once in a while, if I'm working out, or I just have the itch for it, I do actually pop a bunch of tracks from that album on. I do find it catchy.
Nice. Scratches that itch like this Suffer album, huh?
Yeah, there's music like that. I mean, we all have bands like that.
Yeah.
And you get
Yeah,
Pete
they don't
Helmkamp in
all
some of
have to
those
like
albums,
stand
too.
out in a specific way, right? They can be meat and potatoes and just executed perfectly, and that's just all we want to hear. It doesn't have to be the most creative, out of this world sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
No,
was
sometimes
gonna.
you just want more of the same.
It's true.
Yeah.
I was gonna say maybe it's sample time for the listeners to see what the hell we're talking about.
Yeah,
So
sounds good.
we're gonna
All right, what do
listen
we
to
got?
"Suffer," the Killing Culture, Roman's pick, off of the Structure album. So go be right back. All right, we're back from listening to this, and a lot of talk about Frasier and also about the song that was going on. So, does anyone want to, talk about what we just heard?
I'll let you guys go first. I've been listening to this song all day.
Yeah, those vocals are awesome. Like Fred was saying, I totally get the leukemia vibe, the like yelling hardcore vocal. I don't know why I like that so much. I don't hear a lot of death metal bands doing that nowadays. I kind of wish they would, though.
This isn't the lazy vocal. It's actually a lot of effort to do this.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, there's a difference between this and like the excrement and desultory kind of like barely trying to do a vocal. But I dig this stuff a lot. I'd like to do this on one of our songs later.
Yeah, you just hear a vocal technique that you haven't done before, and you just want to do it, eh?
I've always wanted to do this one. This
Oh,
like
okay,
yell.
fair.
I've always loved this thing.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, we were saying like the vocal arrangements over these riffs, they sound, at least to me, like Chuck from Death and shit, and we were saying the vocalist from Asphyx too sounded like him too, and yeah, just like that ending riff where it just goes like so fucking like fast, and it feels like it's like clambering closer and closer to a wall, and then it just like abruptly fucking stops, and they bring that
Yep.
earlier into the song too, and then they kind of break it down in their weird sort of what's it called, like halftime riffs and shit. But yeah, Fred, you got anything to say about it?
I was just surprised, and like we were saying, we know that Obituary is very heavily influenced by Celtic Frost, but even just listening to this one song, it's amazing how much it tied all that together. Because you're listening to it thinking, hey, this sounds like Obituary. Hey, this sounds like Celtic Frost. Oh my god, it sounds like all of it together. And that,
Yeah, well,
it's funny how just like one track will just make you realize how easy it is to blur those lines and how gray the area is between genres and everything, right? It's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's essentially, well, you look at both Asphyx and Obituary, and yeah, they're both super influenced by Celtic Frost, and you can hear all three in this. They're kind of just different ways of doing the same or similar thing.
Hell yeah. And we're also talking about I guess our common love for Frasier during that time too, and possible Frasier metal memes. I hope to
Yes,
see.
well, it started off with the untilled fields of Seinfeld metal memes, but Frasier metal memes, yes, definitely a very obscure topic that is yet to be covered. And
See a lot of
I think it's
overlap.
coming up. I think it's going to happen very soon.
well,
I haven't seen the Frasier, or not Frasier, the Seinfeld metal meme of George wearing the war metal jacket and bullet belt and sunglasses.
Yeah, I've
saying
seen those.
the poser store called running out of you.
The poser store.
okay, that's
You're the
pretty good,
all-time
actually.
bestseller.
The only other one I can think of is the one, the episode with the Kenny Rogers chicken and Kramer's apartment's like glowing red.
Yeah,
And
Jerry
he
has to
comes
sleep
out
there.
and Jerry's like, "What's going on in there?" And Kramer's like, "Slayer's playing," and then has a Slayer with a stage bathed in red.
So I'm getting no sleep.
Oh,
Kerner, Kerner.
Yeah, gonna have to plumb the depths of Frasier to find some good quality content to use here. It's been a while. I just, it's funny to me because it's just a show I grew up with. And, for some reason, it resurfaced in meme culture a couple of years ago for reasons that are unclear to me.
Yeah, I've never really seen the Frasier memes. I got into the show randomly because somebody mentioned the Frasier character, and I looked it up, and then they were like Cheers, and so I went through all of Cheers. I fucking loved it, and then Frasier, and that was great too. But it seems like that's getting more, a little bit more mainstream. People are starting to understand Frasier more, and also Star Trek.
Oh, and so, well, Star Trek is just, yeah.
The OG Star Trek.
Where everyone's a psychic.
Yeah, everyone's fucking psychic. That's always the point.
I'm a Star Trek
man.
nerd. I'm proud of it.
Oh man, we did this. Okay, so one of the common perennial jokes in Cromlech is joking about Kevin's age, even though he's not that old, but he's older than us, so he's old, and he has been since we met him.
Is it
And
old
so
Mormon?
so when Star Trek Picard came out, I mean, we're just like, oh, this is just Kevin. It's like, and so it's funny, man. I don't know if any of you guys ever tried watching it, but it was so ridiculously bad. The first episode was just,
I saw episode 1.
and it's funny because it's so hard not to just make jokes about him being old and senile the whole way through. Like that's all I can think when I see it. And so he's having the dream at the beginning where it's like the ship is going, he's on a ship. And it's like, I didn't know we were on course to Mars. And so And so we make this joke. We make this joke with Kevin all the time. We're just like, he doesn't know where he is, what's happening. Like he hasn't checked the group chat in like a week, or like, well, no, maybe not a week, but in Kevin time, it's a week, even when it's been a day of us saying God knows what. And he's like, he comes in, it's like, what the heck's going on here? And we just, start making fun of him for being old.
Reminds me of like Uncle June from Sopranos.
You know what? Good
not my
choice.
knife.
Good choice picking that image right there, Dan. That guy got a kick out of that. But so anyways, this is getting to a point here. So any of you guys listen to Atlantean Codex?
Yes.
Okay, so on the most recent one, Course of Empire, there was a clip in place of sounding drums. He who walks behind the ears. There's a clip in there. The fear of death is what keeps us alive. And so apparently that's a quote from like Star Trek Discovery or something, which is like great, fantastic. And so Brandon, I'm listening to Atlantean Codex in the jam space on the computer there one day, because we just like we have a desktop down there and we throw all our tunes on there so we can in between songs we want to just chill, have a beer, and listen to some tunes. We can do it. And so anyways, I put that one on. I'm just sitting there by myself, and the quote, the fear of death is what keeps us alive. All of a sudden I hear, there's this dramatic pause, and it's like, I didn't know we were on course to Mars. so the madman had like created another version of the song where he like excised the original quote and put that one in.
Yeah, the senile old man. It also reminds me of Professor Farnsworth from Futurama. If you guys.
Oh yeah, we use
Oh,
that.
God,
We use that a lot.
Well, I already am in my pajamas.
Oh man, we had this whole thing for a bit. It's very explaining anything in Cromlech is difficult to do, quite frankly. But we've all been joking that there's a gas leak in the space and we're all getting dumber because of it. But anyhow, yeah. So I forget how we got onto this, but for some reason we started talking about Donkey Kong in the Cromlech chat, and it started getting Kevin really mad for some reason. Kevin started getting really mad about Donkey Kong, and so it was like, I can't even remember why. But so anyways, we're just like, okay, he screwed up. He reacted. Now we're going like all the way on this. So, we just came in one day. Like we found like my old Nintendo 64. I had Donkey Kong 64 on there. We put it in the jam space with a TV just to prank him, basically. And then we covered the entire desktop of the jam space computer with like Donkey Kong related images, and then like we're all just playing the multiplayer Donkey Kong 64 game while he came in, like just to prank him, basically. But I can't even, like, his reaction was, well, the understatedness of his reaction said everything. Let's just put it that way. But you bring up Farnsworth. It's like I think he has that one. He has that one quote where it's like, "Donkeys aren't monkeys. Stop screwing with my head." And of course,
Barnstrom. Leave it to the 120-year-olds.
This makes me angry. I'll be in my anger dome.
Yeah, if anybody needs me, I'll be in the angry dome. He's like, whoa.
So every time we get Kevin mad, we just imagine that that's where he goes.
He's in the
At least I
angry
do.
dome.
Kevin's in the angry dome.
It's fucking
Man,
funny.
I'm really, getting the roast on the other guys in the band here, but I'm sure if one of them was on here, I'd be getting the roast for the fact that every piece of electronic equipment I've ever used fails. That's guitars, amps. There's a long running joke about me and cars. I figured I'd in before the roasting of the others with some self roasting.
Very 8 Mile of you.
Oh wow.
Yeah, can relate. We have a lot of shitty equipment here too.
But
It only works when Paul's there.
Yeah, it only works when he's here.
got the Midas touch. I was gonna mention in that Suffer interview, there was a good point that came up. Like, with they're obviously Swedish, and I was wondering like how this would go. Like death metal in general seems more like a, or just even metal in general seems more like a English, speaking music. I was wondering like how would you guys view these same bands that are from different countries speaking like their mother tongue, you know? Like,
I
what if
mean,
Cromlech was like, I don't even know if you guys are part of the French Canada, but what if you guys are speaking French or something?
well, actually, so funny story. Like, I mean, we're all in the band. We're all kind of ethnic, I guess, to varying degrees. You know, like Kevin's mostly Irish. Jake's mostly Croatian with some Italian. Brandon's like, yeah, Brandon's just he's half Italian, half Scottish. He's pretty much white Canadian. But he's got a bit of that in there, anyways. He's got a bit of the more ethnic aspect. Baron's pretty much solidly Polish, but of all the people, I mean, like, I'm Ukrainian, and man, like I grew up going to Ukrainian school, going to Ukrainian church, going to Ukrainian Saturday school, there's all this other stuff. So, anyways, I'm just prefacing that with the fact that actually, yeah, on the first Cromlech album, we had a whole section of a song that was actually a Ukrainian song that I grew up learning, that I sang in there, and it worked with it. It worked with it. Plus, we threw in, Baron and I threw in a couple of Slavas just for Slavic supremacy. But yeah, aside from that, yeah, like, I think that yeah, if you bring it in an authentic way, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think many there's many bands in many of the metal genres that have done things in their own native language. We talk about most obvious thing would be the Norwegian scene right there. There's plenty of bands in South America that I think probably use Spanish. I mean, heck.
Yeah, I was thinking more along the lines of like death metal, like if you didn't get the temporary saying like
Sure.
the very end of the song.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're more focused on death metal here. Yeah, well, death metal actually, yeah, death metal I would say is definitely a much more Anglosphere kind of genre. It's much easier to think of like black metal bands going for their ethnic heritage.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
But death metal, yeah, death metal just seems to want to use English. I think that has to do with like the more modern focus and aspect of death metal. I think death metal is very much reacting to I don't know, like modernity, industrial society. I don't know, like the oppressions of the modern age, and in doing so, well, I mean, what's the most spoken language now? It's English. So, but maybe that just kind of comes naturally. I don't know.
yeah. They're probably just listening to all those thrash bands and shit that they were hearing before, all speak English and wanted to sound like that, even more just aggressive and shit. And yeah, like I said, all kind of makes sense. But Fred and Dan, you got anything to say about that?
I'm kind of
Those
surprised that
were
there
the
aren't
days,
more.
my friend.
What
I'm
was
kind of
that?
surprised there aren't more death metal bands that write lyrics in their native tongue. Like the only one I can really think of that does it in any substantial capacity off the top of my head is Undergang from Denmark.
Mm.
All their albums are in Danish as far as I can recall, but yeah, like Roman was saying, like black metal, there's bands that speak their native languages are a dime a dozen. Death metal, like I can't really think of more than a few that don't do it in English.
Besides like Pandemonium or something? No.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a
Outlier.
yeah, no kidding. But I mean, there are songs here and there. I think Dismember had some in Swedish at some point, didn't they? But in any case, not in any significant capacity. It's weird. I'm not sure what causes that difference. Maybe it's some of the nationalism that you see in black metal that brings that out more.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing right there, and that's kind of the mirror image of what I was talking about. Because black metal has this romanticist longing for the past that's related to the heritage, and again, yeah, as you said, the nationalism. So it's just because the focus of the music
Yeah.
is different, so it lends itself to using your native tongue there as a matter of ethnic pride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was gonna even say, with like, I think like Opeth has a song that's like in Swedish, but like it's like their one acoustic song that's like it was more like a ballad, I guess. Like a love song sort of thing. I was like, I don't think that would be too good of an example of someone using their native language, but I guess more so of a more mainstream band doing it. But of course, it's not a death metal song they're singing.
So I just thought of one death metal band actually that does do lyrics and song titles in their name, everything in their native tongue. You know that one Ripikulu or whatever they're called, the one from Finland.
Oh yeah, I
Oh
totally
Yeah,
forgot
yeah,
about
that's
them.
the Ceremonia. Yeah.
Good band,
yeah,
actually.
everything they do is in Finnish. Yeah,
I was gonna say, I can imagine speaking, trying to pronounce Finnish words in a death metal growl, but they do it perfectly.
there you go.
Yeah.
I guess
They
it doesn't
they
really
released
matter
something
at that
new
point.
recently, like not recently, but they're active again, aren't they? I remember they released
They
an EP.
they played
and
some shows down here in LA like not too long ago.
Fucking missed
Yeah,
them.
they were supposed to play up here, but I think they got canceled because it was right when the pandemic started. So I think they had started playing down there, and then they were supposed to come up here and weren't able to make it. They were supposed to play Montreal, and I was going to go to that, but it didn't happen. But they released an EP like 10 years ago or something, and I remember hearing it and not being super enamored with it. But I mean, that doesn't change how good their earlier stuff was. So
Yeah, their earlier stuff was like absurdly fucking heavy. Like
yeah,
it's
having a
like that.
boulder
It's
drop
like
on top of
them
you.
and fucking Moondark. They were fucking heavy too.
Moondark. I don't think I've ever heard them.
Moondar was great.
Yeah, it's a lot like Ripikulu, where or like, you know what it's like a lot too. It's like the fucking the Funebre 1990 demo, where
Oh,
it's
okay.
so low it almost sounds like the fucking strings are gonna fall off the guitar.
Was that Brain Spoon? Was that Brain Spoon?
No,
Or
no,
was it,
before Brain Spoon.
that's the earlier one? Okay, yeah. I always forget the name. Which one was
It's the red one.
that? Yeah. Moondark doesn't get enough mention though. Like, it was just one demo, but holy fuck, was it good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
never heard
I
of
forget
that.
who Moondark was. It was like a few Swedish like guys that were in popular bands, wasn't it?
I don't remember who was in
Oh
there,
no,
but
I'm reading right here that they formed Della Morte,
Oh, it's somebody from Uncanny. I know that.
the
Yeah,
death
one of the
of
guys from Uncanny.
death
Yeah.
and roll.
That's actually how I got in contact with Roman, because he did the what was the name of that podcast? Cave Dweller, right?
Oh yeah, Cave Dweller. Yeah, and I talked about how Galicia had a riff that I could have sworn was an uncanny worship riff. It was like it just sounded so much like a Splenium for Nyctophobia riff that I had to comment on it. I was convinced that that's where you took it from.
Yeah, I was listening to that, and I was like, kind of working and taking pictures of. Well, I sell car parts, so that's what I was doing. I was taking pictures of like car parts to do ads on eBay and shit. And I heard that, I'm like, what the fuck could it possibly be? And I'm listening to the Uncanny album, and I'm like, it's that slow one. And I had to ask you, I'm like, that must have been it, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's that one that gets like dun 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 doo 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 doo. It's it's got the
Yeah.
the chords. Yeah, that it just sounds
Yeah,
so much like Uncanny.
yeah, I told Paul, I was like, during the Galicia thing, we were listening to Uncanny at all. I do like Uncanny, but that just wasn't, it wasn't in my rotation at the time.
Oh,
Yeah, it was
I'm
like-
That
I'm
is,
sure.
that is, I love hearing that. I love hearing the different comparisons of what people hear in the Galicia stuff.
Yeah, that's always interesting when people, because I can relate, and it's interesting when people listen to your music and try to figure out what you were listening to create it. And the fact of the matter is that I found that there's definitely deliberately intentional stuff, but I've said this time and time again. Sometimes you've been listening to metal so long that certain riffs are like part of your DNA, and you don't even know where they came from at a certain point because you've just internalized all these albums that you've listened to over and over and over again. And you might pull some riff from some album that you even forgot you listened to.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
something
that
I
makes
actually
sense.
wanted to bring up with the Cromlech stuff. I was listening to the Ascended Kings recently, and the song Total War, that one fucking blew my tits off, dude. The like second half of it where I think I had brought this up to you when we first started talking on Facebook about like how some of it sounds like Slaughter Lord, or some of it sounds like, I don't know. It's just like all these crazy fucking thrash riffs just thrown in and blended. It's fucking awesome.
Oh,
I
nice,
love
nice, man.
all the fast stuff on the Cromlech shit. Those are some of my favorite parts.
Nice. I'm glad you think so. Yeah, it's funny because when Baron started up the band, it was basically strictly supposed to be an epic doom metal band. I wanted to do more traditional heavy metal, like more broadly. But I mean, I definitely, I liked Solstice, I liked Bathory, I liked Candlemass, I liked all these things. And so over time, we started picking up the speed because, well, I would write fast riffs essentially. And False Peace, Total War, yeah, the second song on the album, that was the last song I wrote for it actually. Everything else was written before that. And yeah, I basically just had the itch to do a very 80s style thrash song. So obviously, you can hear some Slayer in there. You can hear. There's one thing that really came in on Ascent of Kings with that song and Born with Sword in Hand in particular. There's a lot of riffs that we were inspired by Iced Earth's Storm Rider. Night of the Storm Rider. We definitely took a lot of those gallops from there. So there was that aspect of that kind of that power thrash. Uh, yeah, again, a lot of the other stuff, it would be difficult to pinpoint exactly what it was. I think that I was definitely in the middle of that song where it gets to the two-handed tapping solo right there. We get where there's kind of a doom section. Uh, that second part I do right after the tapping where I do the harmonized thing. That was me trying to harken back somewhat to those early '90s death metal solos that tried to be shred, even though there was it was in death metal. Who was it? James Murphy from Obituary was great at doing those guitar solos. Those super those super melodic guitar solos in Obituary songs that otherwise were not melodic at all. I was trying to harken back a little bit to that. Uh, the lead section that comes right after that is pretty Metallica sounding, so I don't think I can really hide that. I was trying to think of other things that. You know what? Actually, yeah. Towards the end of the song, now I'm starting to think. There's the part where we almost get into a blast beat where it gets really fast. That riff was actually. I don't even know. I just sat down one day and like wrote that, and I think basically it might have been influenced by Ripper's Experiment of Existence, if you know that album.
No, I
Uh,
don't.
oh man, dude, you got to check out Ripper. Ripper is basically they came out. They're on Dark Descent.
I
They're from
think I know
Chile.
the band. I'm not
Yeah.
super familiar with them, but I do know the band. I remember they were kind of like a wacky death thrash band, weren't they?
Yeah. So basically, yeah, they're Death Thrash. I'd say Experiment of Existence and the EPs they did after that are excellent. They sound so much in a legitimately good quality way. They sound so much like Chilean Pentagram, like Sepultura, all that good '80s South American death thrash. They sound a lot like that. I think
Is this
one of the
the band from Chile?
yes,
Yeah, okay. I do remember this band. Yeah, I remember they were fucking insane.
yeah, that was sick. Well, anyways, that was definitely an influence for some of the riffs in the in False Peace, Total War. So yeah, it's yeah, I basically maybe it's almost kind of a bit of a superficial thing, but I figured after the first song in the album, which is very like mid-paced to slow, I just wanted like a ripping thrasher. So I wrote one.
Nice.
That's fair.
Yeah, that song is so fucking sick. That is definitely my favorite. That one and Born with Sword in Hand, the two you were talking about with the
Yeah, the two fast ones. Yeah, I get that.
yeah, man, those cuz it contrasts too, because there are like doomy bits in both of those songs, and then it just kind of evolves and then goes into these giant like death thrash clusters. Those are so fucking cool. And it kind of like blurs the line of everything, you know. It basically is like a kind of power metal-ish band, right? Cromlech. But it I mean it basically, you know what I mean. But
Yeah,
it
yeah.
kind of takes everything from black and thrash and death and kind of makes it work. It's fucking awesome.
Oh, well, yeah, thanks, man. They basically, uh, it is, the basis of Cromlech is always very much going to be rooted in that more traditional heavy metal and stuff that's adjacent to it. But, I jokingly refer to my favorite genre of music as guys playing riffs that they like.
Yeah,
So
that's that's a great way to put it.
that's kind of what Cromlech is at this point on a certain level. But no, I mean, like you listen to the album. There's definitely like there's definitely a sense of thematic unity throughout these things. I mean, you could listen to the first song and the last song, and some of the things in between. Like you could still be like, yeah, I can see how this is an epic doom band, but or you could at least see how it's an epic metal band in some respect. It's just I just didn't want to limit myself entirely stylistically. I just kind of throw in what works. One of the first things was that I came listening to traditional heavy metal out of a death and black metal background, so I would go for the stuff that had a little bit more crossover with that. Like Candlemass had some heavy. Always listen to Candlemass. Candlemass had heavy riffs. I probably mentioned. I think I mentioned this in the first interview we did back with Terminus. That Angel Witch, Angel Witch, super underrated influence for early death metal, black metal. Tom G. Warrior would always talk about how Angel Witch's Extermination Day, the demo from 1979, was an influence for Messiah. You can hear Celtic Frost riffs all over that. And basically, where I'm going with all this is that all these bands kind of had some heavier, darker riffs, and that was what I was interested in. So I kind of, I synthesized what I felt was compatible, and then after a while, well, it just, took on a life of its own, and all of a sudden, we have we have ripping thrashers in the middle of a Cromlech album.
Yeah, good fucking idea. Me and Paul have been fans of Angel Witch for the longest time too. That's a
So
big
fucking
one for
good.
us.
Amazing band.
Oh yeah, that definitely. I definitely think that. I definitely think that their influence on extreme metal is very underrated because people will very often reference the self-titled, which is good. Don't get me wrong, and the self-titled even has some pretty heavy riffs like in Angel of Death. Angel of Death has some straight up Celtic Frost riffs in it, but it's also it's a pretty catchy new wave of British heavy metal album aside from that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you check the demos out, the stuff that's available on Sinister History, I mean, some of that stuff is just so heavy, man. It clearly set the stage for a lot of the stuff that came in the '80s.
Yeah,
Yeah,
weren't
you
they
have
saying weren't they saying with that self-titled release that they had to like basically make it a little bit more commercial to be released, like from those demos? Like I know they had like radio edits of like the actual self-titled song, Angel Witch.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I do know. Oh man, this tickled my autism so much when I found it out for the first time. That there's that one instrumental at the end of the album, Devil's Tower, and then I go on Sinister History, and they have a 7-minute instrumental version of it when it's just like a 2-minute outro in the album, and I'm like, yes, it's just like it was perfect. That's an example of man that one had great riffs in it as well. It had that nice halfway point between some of the proggier stuff and the heavier riffs that they were hinting at later on. But yeah, you listen to the title track, and that's very clearly a commercial friendly radio song. With like, everybody knows the chorus.
You're an Angel Witch. Yeah, I read some interviews, like back when that album first came out, and people were saying that it was a Black Sabbath ripoff. I don't really understand that, but that's what people were
Yeah,
saying.
yeah. I
I
don't think
mean,
I could really say
I don't
that
get
about
it.
it.
I can hear some influence, but going as far as say rip off, that seems a bit extreme.
I mean, I would say it sounds more like '70s like upbeat hard rock than it does like Black Sabbath.
They sound more like Thin Lizzy than they do Black Sabbath, I would say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Man,
Because
Thin
they got
Lizzy,
all
that's
those like fucking the melodic like chorus parts and everything like that too.
yeah. It's funny you should mention Thin Lizzy there because that's another band where I'd have to make a best of. I can't listen to a whole Thin Lizzy album, but I can pick a couple of songs and be like, these are good songs.
Yeah, same.
Thin Lizzy and Revenge, huh?
Because
There's a mixtape for you.
no, somebody should take it upon themselves to blend those two.
Yeah, I want to hear Boys Are Back in Town cover by Revenge.
I'm waiting for the Split album.
Yeah,
man.
Split album.
Hey, aren't they both Irish or Scottish? Forget.
Guys
Thin
in
Lizzy is
Revenge, I don't
Irish.
know.
Revenge, I think those guys are Scottish.
Oh man, well those two don't get along. You
Well,
know.
there you go. They can get some revenge on Thin Lizzy.
Oh,
Yeah, there you go.
Wow.
oh man. Oof.
I wanted to bring up something else. I can't even remember. My mind is like a fucking sieve right now. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I was going to say kind of the idea that you were talking about, Roman, of blending all these ideas into just your band and making it a thing. It feels like a lot of bands don't really do that nowadays. It feels like a lot of bands kind of stick to one sound and try to recreate something, and it usually is kind of a boring thing. You kind of need the exploration. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I would absolutely agree. And what I would say on that is that really, at the end of the day, we're trying to make music. We're trying to produce, God willing, in some respect, art. And
Yeah.
if you're trying to do that, then why would? Okay, there can always be. See, the intention has to be there first. And the thing is that there can be something interesting in limiting the tools you have available, because sometimes you can produce some pretty interesting stuff on that. Like, for example, there is dead simple stupid stuff, and I don't mean just riff wise, but songwriting structure wise, like Iljarn or Discharge, where literally you have songs that have two riffs. You have two riffs, and the riffs are not complicated at all. They're very simple, and within that limitation, however, they managed to create something profound and interesting, regardless of the fact that it's very simple. So there can be something to, limiting your tool set if you're trying to create something very specific, but the intent has to be there, or at least the implicit intent or some spirit or idea needs to be there. What I see with what you're talking about, where they're trying to ape a particular kind of sound, or be like, oh, I'm doing this combined with that or whatever. It seems like the confusion is the form is being confused for the content, like the aesthetics are being confused for what actually makes music. And if you're writing music, then as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I should use all available tools as long as I can make a coherent work by the end of it.
Yeah, and it seems like the bands that aren't doing that are the ones that are getting the most popular.
Yeah, I would say so. We can talk about every single genre that has worship bands for a long time now. I mean, I don't even know what the thing is anymore.
Or you can just do push-ups in the pit. If you know what I mean.
push-ups.
Or row the oar like Amon Amarth.
Well, like at least
Yeah,
please
Amon Amarth,
don't.
Rose the Ore, and Frozen Soul, they do the push-ups.
wasn't there the one where everybody was lying on their back and twitching like insects during blast beats or something?
That sounds like a power violence thing. I
Yeah,
don't know.
there was that.
And we've
there
come
was-
full circle.
There you go. Yeah, there was there was wearing tinfoil hats to blood incantation shows. That was one I
Yeah,
remember.
doy, the UFOs, doy.
Oh, God. When I went to the Blood Incantation show here back in 19 or 20, I forget, a guy came dressed up in a blow-up alien costume that looked like he was holding him. So,
It was
and he was writing,
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
I've seen those.
like yeah, he's
It's like the inflatable ones, yeah.
it's inflatable, yeah, and
And
then
it
the
hides the
alien looks like
legs.
it's holding you, and yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I
And
just
he was
want the
just
aliens to
run
hug
around
me,
the
man.
pit like that.
I just
I'm
want
like,
them to hug me.
what the?
All hail blood incantation.
Oh man.
greatest band in the scene right now. Am I right, guys? High five.
Oh.
Greatest band ever, I think.
Yeah.
Fred, how many of their CDs you got?
Yeah, Fred, do you have any Blood Incantation CDs?
I think I have their EP on both albums actually.
Oof.
Hell yeah.
I don't have a problem with them. I hate the hype around them, but in terms of listening to them, they're fine.
Yeah, I mean,
Hot take right there.
I'm mostly sick
yeah,
of people
hot,
thinking they're
total
the
hot
second
take.
coming of death metal.
best thing I can say about them is they have a good riff occasionally. That's probably about the most I could ever say. Also, maybe I remember back in 2016, I tried listening to Starspawn, and I felt like that was a little better than whatever they did in Hidden History of the Human Race. But we're still comparing, like, I don't know, man. That's about the most I'll say about them.
Starspawn
what
isn't
really
too bad, is
bothers
it?
me.
I haven't listened to it in such a long time. Is it any good, Starspawn?
Yeah, it's fine. Like
It's fine.
It would be
it's
difficult
not.
for me to say.
It's
been a long
it's
time.
not like as revolutionary as everyone seems to think it is. Like it's a good album. I don't pull it out very often. Again, I think the biggest problem with Blood Incantation is the fan base. They just think they're the fucking best thing since sliced bread, and I mean, they're not bad, but they're not like they're good. I'd leave it at that.
They're good enough.
I've heard a lot that Blood Incantation is ripping off Time Ghoul. Have you guys ever heard this?
Yeah, I've heard that a lot, and
Yeah.
superficially, I can understand why people would say that. But keep going.
Riff wise, I don't really
Emphasis on superficially.
hear it.
Continue.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything to continue. I have a friend who really just hates that band, and I showed him Time Ghoul. He didn't know who they were, and he's like, "This is a million times fucking better than fucking Blood Incantation."
Yeah, actually, I remember somebody said that Blood Incantation actually really sounds like death more than anything. I can see that to a certain extent. I'm not sure, if I would, put all my chips on that one, but I can definitely see it more than Time Ghoul.
It's a little bit bizarre talking about modern death metal bands that are kind of making it. I don't know why it is so bizarre to me. Frozen Soul, Blood Incantation. I think Gate Creeper's another one. I heard something. I heard
quality
something.
bands, Dan. All very
Are these quality bands?
Oh, they're very quality. Oh,
They have great interviews.
Honestly,
great,
I can't really
what's in the
say because
bag.
I haven't really taken the time to listen to too much of this stuff. So I don't know. Is it worth the hype? I really don't know.
I think we found our
But
next.
I know these are the big bands these days.
I think we found our next Galicia influence, huh?
What, Gate
bit.
Creeper?
Gate Creeper, Blood
Gate
Incantation, Frozen Soul, all of that.
And X
I think the one that bothers me most is Sanguisuga Bog. Like it's just all
Yeah, that's the worst of them all.
all memes nonstop. It's just oh my god, and like it's like
Sang
they're-
Suabog.
they're
I've
like
never heard of that.
back when they were on Maggot Stomp and they released like a bunch of stuff at once, and I got their demo, Pornographic Seizures, and you know what? For an 11-minute long thing, that was fine. And then their album came out, the first one. I'm like, what the fuck is this? And the second
know.
one is just even worse. Like, what the hell's the cover? The fucking scorpion woman? Like,
Yeah,
they, like-
it looks like something we would Photoshop, but we would never do that. We would Photoshop it for a fucking thumbnail for one of these episodes, but not for an album.
yeah. Yeah.
This is at this point nobody's gonna listen to this, but at some point it's like, oh, this is the shit talking episode about the new death metal scene.
I mean,
I knew
I
we would
think-
get. I knew we would get here, and we might be here for a while.
The thing is, if your band is brand new and it has like a million different T-shirt and baseball cap designs, been like 3 songs out on Bandcamp, then you have a problem.
Industry plant, bro. No.
Yeah,
You know,
fucking feds.
on that note of me being extremely disappointed by Sanguisuga Bog, I'm probably gonna have to head out because I'm gonna be a freaking walking zombie tomorrow.
I was gonna say anyway. Have you guys got any last words about the album?
Oh,
Fred, you want to go
I'll stick
first?
around for that.
Fred, go ahead.
Yeah, if we're wrapping up, we'll stick around for the whole thing. But yeah, no, Suffer. I had heard this quite a while ago. It was nice to revisit it. It's be revisiting it now that I have a greater scope on death metal is really lets me pull out the influences that were on there and similarities. And it was, you know, like we said, it's fairly meat and potatoes. It doesn't necessarily excel in any particular areas, but it's good in all areas too. It's an enjoyable, it's fun to back. I think the biggest compliment I can pay it is if I find a copy, I'll pick it up.
All right.
Go for it, Dan.
Okay. The only couple other things I wanted to say about this band is when I was looking into them, and I came across a couple other bands that had this like mid-era death sound from the same time, 94, 95. A band called Strangulation from Brazil, and then a band called Gory Blister from Italy. Excellent bands. And this feels like one of these albums where it's like a kind of a classic Swedish band, but you kind of don't go as far to check out their albums. It almost feels like Traumatic, because Traumatic has those demos, and then they have the album. But the album was actually good. It sounded like fucking. It kind of sounded like Zizma or something. But
Yeah, that Climax one.
Yeah. In
so
this case, well, not the Climax, but are you talking about the Traumatic album?
Yeah, that album. I forget something Climax, but yeah.
Honestly, it's pretty good. It's got some Zizma moments. It's got some like death
like-
and roll moments, but
like
it's also
stoner
got some like
shit.
crust punk stoner moments. It's not bad. It's something worth going back to a couple times every 5 years, I would say.
Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, but anyway, I think the Suffer album, it's somewhat of a hidden gem. I think if you're looking for a straightforward like Morgoth or Pestilence type album, or the mid-era death, it's for you. Oh, and also one other thing. You know what this kind of reminded me of as well? It also reminded me of Foreign Objects.
Oh, how so?
I think just because Foreign Objects is like kind of similar to Death in their technicality or something. I don't know. It reminded me of fucking Foreign Objects and Gorguts and all that shit. But it's good, dude. I mean, it's kind of a hidden one, but it's dank. I would say check it out.
Yeah, for me, last words, definitely I wouldn't want to say weirdest, but definitely an outlier in Swedish death metal. Just, for sounding sort of like an imitation band of, death and this Floridian death metal. It's kind of nice to see that, all these bands across continents are, listening to each other and don't only want to stick within a scene, but want to do something that they want. Especially what they're saying in the interview about the vocals. They're like, if we change them to be like the Swedish scene, then we're just going to sound like everyone else here. We want to stand out a bit, and, I'm sure that definitely come into play with some shows that they played, sounding a little bit different. And, for how short this album is, because it kind of goes by in like a blur. Like there's not really any time for it to be, tugging your chain or anything like that. It just kind of gives you exactly what it is and fucking unapologetic about it. And it's fucking sick. Thanks for bringing it on here, Roman. You got any words about it?
Yeah, thanks. No, I'll just say what I did at the beginning. It's just a good, solid death metal album that most people are not too familiar with, and just happened to be something I was listening at the time that just scratched an itch for me. And thanks for having me on, guys. This is pretty fun.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, we'll definitely do it again because great guest.
Yeah, I'd like to have you on again.
Yeah, I would love to be back on again. Guys, I can't speak from you, but my laptop is about to die, and I have to go up like 2 floors to get my charger. So
Now we're
So,
cutting it here.
Good thing we're done.
good.
Yep.
Okay, right on.
All right.
All right, guys.
Cool. Cheers,
Thanks.
guys.
All right, partner. Thank you for coming on, man.
All right, thanks for having me, guys.
Thousand rattles,